Hey, Mark, thanks for joining me for Lead Time Chats.
Absolutely. Thank you for inviting me.
So the topic we're going to talk about today is the topic of sponsorship and how do you actually, there are a lot of people who want to help under index people in tech, but how do you actually help and support them in a way that's genuinely useful? And the reason I wanted to talk to you about this was because, in two of the recordings I had before, both Duretti and Kaya mentioned you independently as someone who's really supported them as they negotiated new roles. And so I thought you would be the perfect person to talk to as someone who's actually doing things that are effective.
I mean, I want to say something about Kaya and Dreddy that will directly start the conversation, which is I think they've both supported me. Like I think that they've both been so great to work with in so many ways. Like I think that the core thing I would say is if you view yourself as doing sponsorship as a way of just finding people of a certain group and uplifting those people and then moving on, I don't think that's likely to be super successful. If
Mm.
you find a way to create a working relationship with people who are quite different from you in age, race, background, whatever characteristics, and you find a way to appreciate them and learn from them and value them and help them and do things that advance them, then it works. I mean, I guess at some level, I feel like that's kind of the core of it is that where I've seen people fail, it's like I have a quota to meet for how many Black people I have uplifted. And yeah,
Right.
you can do some good that way. You can,
Yeah.
but that's not sponsoring somebody. That's not understanding somebody. That's not who is this person? What are they great at? What do they want? Where if I hear about an opportunity, how do I understand, oh yeah, this is something that Dreddy would totally love to hear about?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to waste her time. She's been down that road 3 times. I'm not going to tell her that again. No, I'm just going to filter that out for her. If she's already told me, don't send me any more things like that.
Mm.
That comes from knowing somebody. That comes from being at some level friends with them. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't mean to say all of work is just friendships, but I do think that all of work is understanding people and understanding the people you're working with. So it's nice that they both mentioned me. That's awesome. I would 100% feel, I mean, I feel as much uplifted by them as anything I've done for either of them. And that's not a selfish reason to do it. It's just that's the nature of the relationship is that you don't view it as, I don't know what the right word is, patronage or something. You don't view it as one
Yeah.
way. You view it as, oh wow, you have something really different to say. You have something to teach me.
Mm-hmm.
I am in a position where for whatever reason, luck or age or whatever, I'm able to give you an opportunity that you might not otherwise know about. Let me help you with that. And that it's because you care about them. It's because you care about those individuals.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think that so often, so many of these programs wind up being, we would like to create a PR splash. We would like to not be embarrassed by this number. We would like to do something to counteract the bad stories that are going around about us.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not, wow, these people are awesome. These people are great. I would love to learn from them and work with them and
Right.
have them benefit the places where I work.
Yeah, it's coming
Um,
more from a place of either fear of like, oh, we don't want to have responded the incorrect way. So let's figure
right,
out like what are other people doing? Let's do that. And it's very performative. Or
right.
I've also seen for individuals, like a lot of times people will be like, oh, I mentor a, a woman in tech. She's coming out of a boot camp or something. And it's very I mean, the mentorship feels very one way in their head,
Mhm.
but also that the intention behind it is really like, I want to like by doing this, I now feel like I've contributed something. I feel
Right.
good about myself rather than let me genuinely create a relationship and help this person find what's unique about them and help them.
Mhm. I do think we were talking about this when you emailed me about this. I do think it's really easy to fall into, and I have fallen into in the past, feeling like, oh, I've done this thing and I am benefiting from it from having done this thing.
Mm,
It is, speaking as a white man, people are eager to give credit to white men for diversity programs. They're like
mhm,
100% like excited about finding white men who are doing something that they are appreciative of.
mhm,
And it's bad. It takes a ton of attention and energy from those people who, first of all, have no choice but to do that work. That
right.
if they are going to have a career and if they're going to uplift people who look like them, they have to do that work. And
Mhm,
second, that probably know the programs far better and probably know the needs dramatically better than I will ever. And so, periodically, like some founder, some white male founder will call and say, like, I know that you have a reputation around diversity and inclusion. Can you help
mhm,
me? And I'm really like, I'm just like, no, you should pay somebody who is an expert in
mm,
this. You should give money to people who have had to learn these lessons and not just ask me for free advice. And then their interest level immediately plummets. And I consider, like, at some
like, oh,
level,
I have to
great.
pay
Like,
for this? Like,
yeah. Or no, I have to talk to somebody who I'm not comfortable with. I have to
right.
talk, like, what they're saying is, I don't know how to speak to somebody in these categories where my company
Yeah,
is not does not have good representation. And I'm like,
right.
that's the problem, right? Like, you should find somebody who,
Yeah.
as a service, you can give money to consult with on this. There are plenty of people who do great work like that. And then figure out, like, why it is that that was so hard. Like,
Yeah.
what is it about your network, your experiences, the people you hang out with, that make you want to come to me to ask about diversity? Like,
Hmm.
I am not somebody that should be known as an expert on diversity and inclusion. So when
Hmm.
you're saying, like, you think of it as mentoring, that's one way. That's kind of a way of, like, I like it when I hear people say the reason not to do this is because it centers yourself. And I have
Mm,
done that in the past. Like, I did this program at Etsy where I got a ton of acclaim for it. And, like, people, my professional reputation went up. There were people who wanted to talk to me about it. And it was harmful to me, in the sense that, like, it made me feel like that was the reason to keep investing in it. Wow, I had this success, I
mm,
should keep doing it. And that's not the reason. That's not the reason. The reason is because our industry produces racist, sexist, transphobic, ableist outcomes. And if you do not actively fight against those things, those will continue to be the default. And
yeah.
so the reason to do it is because our industry that we have created, especially people my age who are older, we have created this industry and it's bad and we need to fix it and we need to take responsibility for fixing it.
Hmm.
So now, like, if I do something, it's usually one-on-one, or I
Hmm.
don't talk about it at all. Or, like, there's so many people where I would never say my friend so and so, because it attaches to me some benefit of knowing this person from a different group. And I would instead
Mm,
say, look at this amazing person. I don't have to put the words my friend in there. I
hmm.
would say, look at how incredible this person is.
Mm,
And try and focus the attention away from you and what you're doing and what you've accomplished and
hmm.
why it matters that you're there. And instead look at them, focus on them and make the attention about them and what they are doing.
Yeah.
And that one thing probably makes a lot of the relationships stronger. I'm
Yeah.
not trying to gain credibility by knowing them.
So I hear you don't want to focus on yourself.
Right.
And I've asked you to do this chat with me on
Right.
sponsorship because I'm like,
Right.
you seem to be really good at this, right? And so that's kind of
Right.
creates this yeah, this interesting tension. But I do think that it's important to share, like, for other people to know what is effective, because
Mhm.
there are a lot of people there with good intentions and they're doing things that are not
Sure.
necessarily helpful, that are, they're getting some benefit from it. And as you're saying, like, that dynamic is not a healthy one. And at the same time, it's not like, well, I don't want to, I'm not the right person to do it, because it is so important for white men to do this work, right? Like,
Hmm. Yep.
I was talking to Kate just earlier, and she was Kate Houston. She was telling me how, like, we were talking about how for women and other under indexed populations in tech, right, when they advocate for themselves, it can
Mhm.
be experienced and perceived as very different than when a white man advocates for them or helps out with these diversity efforts. So how do you balance that? Like, it is important for white men to be doing this work so that
Mhm.
women and other index groups are not doing all the emotional labor and
Absolutely.
not taking credit for it. And one of the ways I heard was by doing the one-on-one stuff and really distancing yourself from it.
Yeah, I mean, I let's see. So first of all, I guess what I would say is I think your question is right. Like there are a lot of people who, if you ask them, are you okay with the current state of the industry? They would say no. Are you okay with the current state of your company? Are you happy that 90% of the people in your company are white men or something like that?
Mm-hmm.
No, absolutely not. But it's not clear to them what steps to take
Yeah.
directly.
Mm-hmm.
um, and or they've tried some things and they haven't worked or whatever. And you're also right that if a black woman in a leadership role says, I'm going to hire this black woman, there are plenty
Mm-hmm.
of people who will attack that decision saying, oh, you're just like promoting black people because you're a black
Mm-hmm.
person. Whereas if I say I want to hire this black woman, they won't attack me for that. They'll or at least like that will come later, right? Like
Right.
they'll say like, are you sure that this is somebody who meets our bar, whatever, whatever
Mm-hmm.
the language is for
Or
whether
like,
you're
oh,
going to be
Mark's really
comfortable.
good at diversity hiring or
Right,
something.
right, exactly. So I totally agree with you that like those things are really important. I also want to say like I don't think that I think about this in a very clear, systematic, structured way.
Mm.
I think you previously talked to Laura Hogan. I think she
Mm-hmm.
does a workshop on this. Based on what I know about her, I suspect she probably has much better organized and structured thoughts about sponsorship than I would have. But
Mm-hmm.
based just on my experience, like the things um, that I would encourage people to do are to recognize that, like, if especially if you're in a majority group, you are very likely to have a lot of opportunities greater than the number of opportunities that others, people in other groups and under index groups are likely to
Mm-hmm.
have. And therefore, if you get an opportunity, your first instinct should be, do I need to take this one or should I give it away? And there are
Mm-hmm.
so many things where like somebody will contact, like I get like a lot of pings about like, do you want to be our VP of engineering or SVP or CTO or things like that. And one of
Mm-hmm.
my first instincts is, who do I know that should take this job?
Mm-hmm.
And you get kind of two benefits from that. One of them is that recruiters know that you will introduce them to people other than yourself if you have somebody that's good. And so they'll come back to you with other things and they'll say, oh,
Mm-hmm.
thank you so much for introducing me to so and so. Now I'm
Mm-hmm.
looking for this one. Is this, are you interested in this or do you know anyone?
Mm-hmm.
So if anything, you're creating more opportunities. Like it's not costing you anything to give away a great opportunity because
There's
for
no
that
scarcity
recruiter,
of opportunities.
there's no scarcity and that recruiter will learn that they can come to you and get help and like
Yeah.
get an introduction. And so if you say like, oh, who you should really talk to about this is this person, in
Mm-hmm.
all likelihood they're going to be totally psyched that
Mm-hmm.
like you're introducing them not only to people that you recommend but the people that are helping diversify their panel because they have that problem too, right? Like the
Right.
recruiters will try and figure out how to diversify the pool from which they're
Yeah.
interviewing, right? And so the second thing is just that I think that there's so much that comes from just listening to how people are seeing their experience
Mm-hmm.
and trying to figure out how to push on that for them. If they come in and they're like, oh, I did this interview and it really didn't go well and I'm really thinking about giving up, and you just say, what? No, don't give up, you're awesome. Like you're one of the people that like people say this and they say this and they say this, don't give up. Let me help you do this thing and this thing and this thing. The
Mm-hmm.
fact that you're making the connection is valuable. But if you as
Yeah.
an experienced person or as a leader can tell them, no, you're doing great, like don't give up, that like the number of people who drop out because they don't believe they can make it
Yeah.
on their own is really high. The number of people who select out of the group that is under indexed because they're like, this is
Hmm.
not a welcoming industry. Great, you can make it a welcoming industry by welcoming them, by like supporting
Right.
them and like saying like, no, 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 you are absolutely part of our industry. You are absolutely somebody we should be hiring. They didn't want you, fine, big deal. They didn't want you. Like, we're gonna find somebody else. Like, let's figure out who else you should be talking
Yeah.
to now. And that's like there's nothing complicated about that. It's like talking to people, getting to know them, cheering for them, backing them up, creating opportunities for them, making sure that if you get an opportunity that your first instinct is, all right, who else would be good for this? And
Hmm.
just trust that by virtue of being in a majority group, you're not really costing yourself anything. You're not doing anything that's like really going to harm you in the long term. And if you do this, it's something that, like we said at the beginning, probably will benefit you, although that's not the reason you should do it.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I think I think when people think of like mentorship or sponsorship, they're like, oh, I've got to carve out an hour a week. They think it's like a big thing, or like, I need to go find this project to pass on to
right.
this person. But I think a lot of the things you're saying, and that I heard from Duretti and Kaya, and also from my personal experience with you, is that they can be really small things. It's just actually doing them, right? Like when I was starting my coaching and consulting business, like you were like, hey, can I write you, let me know if you need a testimonial for your website. And I said, sure. And you wrote me like a wonderful testimonial. And I know that probably seems like a tiny thing for you, but it was really impactful in like lending your credibility to my brand. And like it was something that, like, I mean, there's people I worked with and they said, yeah, I'll write you a testimonial. And like it took months, right? Your turnaround was like a day. I mean, people hate writing testimonials, to be fair, but it's like it's not even like it needs to be huge, right? It could just be
Right.
like these little things here and there of like, hey, I might send this type of email. Like here's an email script. Like Kaya said, you sent her email scripts for negotiating like a full-time role. And Duretti said you helped bring her in at a different level than she might have considered coming in at Mailchimp. And so like just these really small things, just I guess maybe a reminder to people who are listening that it doesn't have to be these like huge like sponsorship things. It's just like a lot of little things here and
Mm,
there can add up.
yeah, I mean, you're certainly right. There are some things that are really small that can add up. When I was leaving
Or at
one
least that
company,
felt large to me. I
yeah,
mean, what you did felt large to me, even though maybe to you it was a small,
yeah,
whatever, a few minute thing.
yeah. I left when I left a company once. Somebody wrote me and they said, um, "By the way, I really want to thank you. I was in a meeting once and somebody interrupted me, and you shut them down and returned the attention to me."
Mhm.
I had no memory of it. I didn't remember interacting with them before or after that. And I was like, oh, I totally didn't remember it at all, right? Um, those are things that matter a ton to people who are
Yeah.
interrupted all the time, which matters a ton to inclusion, which matters a ton to your ability to attract people in underrepresented groups. And conversely, really small things can also undermine all of those things. So I do
Mhm.
think you're right that there are small things. But I would also say that, like, I mean, I think that there are things that you have to do where the only way to change the diversity of a team is to really push for it and insist
Mhm.
on it. And it is a big thing to do that. And there are
Mhm.
places where I've tried to do that and I've failed. I've completely failed to make headway or progress. And then there are other places where I basically sort of said, like, the reasons that you are trying to reject this candidate are bad reasons and I'm not going to accept them, and you have to accept this candidate. And people have been up in arms about it and really unhappy
Mhm.
about it, and then later come back to me and said, you were right, I'm sorry. Like, so
Yeah.
you're right that some things are small, but I think that it's more about, what do I say about this? It's more about how can I create an outcome that is the right outcome, no matter what I have to do that? Like, even if I have to
Mm-hmm.
do a very small thing, which is that people recognize that you, Gene, are awesome by the fact that I do a very small quote, great. Like that is totally an easy thing to do. If it's
Mm-hmm.
that this interview process is having racist outcomes and we've put a bunch of good candidates through it, and it is clearly
Mm-hmm.
the result that whether or not we want to identify any individual person as a racist person, it is clearly the result that the outcomes of the process are racist. What are we going to do about that? Well, I'll tell you what we're going to do about that. We're going to hire people who look different than all y'all. Like, this is
Mm-hmm.
not working. And that can be a big push. That can be a big
Yeah.
thing. But that is like, that in itself will create opportunity for a large group of people.
Yeah. That makes sense. And I think what now, after hearing you say that, I think my interpretation of what I said was like the things I've seen and I've heard from you are kind of small things, right? Because like they're things, the ways you've helped me, or things that I imagine you might consider, oh, that didn't take a lot of work, right? It wasn't like
Right.
fundamentally changing a company's hiring process because we haven't worked in the same org before. But
Right.
like don't stop at the small things, like be
Right.
willing to fight for do whatever you need to do to have the outcome you want.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Measure
Yeah.
yourself by the outcomes.
Right.
Like, not just that, like, and yes, those can come from small things, but sometimes they have to come from large things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so for people who want to help improve the industry and make it a less racist, less sexist place, but they don't quite know where to start, what's one thing you wish people would do more of?
Um, what's one thing I wish people would do more of? I mean, so I'm involved in this group, Code 2040, which has been around since like 2013 or so. I've been on the board for most of that time, almost all that time. And I meet such great people through that organization. Kaya Thomas, who you're
Mm-hmm.
talking about, is one of them. Um, every time I go to a Code 2040 event, um, there are so many people that I come away feeling like that person was amazing. I'm so happy I met them. I'm so happy I got a chance to hear what they're working on. I wonder what they're going to do next. And then I keep in touch with them, and they're like, "Hey, I just got an offer from Microsoft. Would you look it over for me?" And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh yeah, you can totally get more money." And like, we that
Right.
becomes like a relationship over time, right? Like,
Yeah.
that becomes something where over time we keep in touch.
Mm-hmm.
And um I think people want change to be easy and accessible,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not. I think you have to not just say like, yeah, I got my company to sponsor Code 2040, or yeah,
Right.
I reached out to two Black candidates and one of them came in, or yeah, I helped with one negotiation. I think
Mm-hmm.
you have to just sort of say like, what is it going to take for this outcome to really be different? And when I go to Code 2040 events, I'm often one of the few white people. When
Mm-hmm.
Code 2040 students go to a bunch of different companies, they have bad experiences at almost all of those companies.
Mm-hmm.
People clutching purses and like, not saying hi to them and treating them like delivery people. And not that there's anything wrong with delivery people. And like, any of the people who walk into a company should be treated well, but
Yeah.
the experience of the students in Code 2040, which focuses on Black and Latinx students, college students, is that they are treated like invaders, that they're treated like other and unwelcome people.
Mm-hmm.
That is like, what do you have to do if you're a white person whose first reaction to a Black person coming into your office is there's something unusual and bad about this? They must be like not somebody that I would view as a peer. Then there's a lot of work you have to do around that.
Yeah.
So, what's one thing I wish people would do? Walk up to the Black person and say, "Hey, how's it going? Can I help you find who
Mm-hmm.
you're looking for?" In a warm and open way. Walk
Mhm.
up to a transgender person and ask them how it was onboarding at the company. Walk up to somebody who has a disability and just ask them about what their experience is. And if they say, I'm tired, I don't want to talk to about it, I've talked to about it 5 times today, fine, leave them alone. But
Right.
if they tell you about something, take it on and pick it up
Yeah.
for them and make change as a result of that, and do
Right.
that for the rest of your life. Like, that's what
Right.
I would like to
Yeah.
say
Yeah.
to
Have those
you.
conversations, not to like check that
Right,
box and be like,
right,
good on me, but
right,
actually so that you can start to create those relationships that will be ongoing, and you'll continue to create those relationships for the rest of your life.
correct, correct.
Yeah. All
So I
right.
have a
That's
very small
that'll
ask.
be easy. Yeah.
Yes,
Cool. Well,
cool.
thank you so much for sharing, Mark.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. I appreciate it.